It's the Monday Night Results Show. Just the results, and nothing but the results. From this past weekend's race at your favorite racetracks, if you're looking for a lot of happy talk and fluff, tune into the Disney Channel. And now, the man with a mind for statistics. Unfortunately, those statistics are usually odds on the ponies in Vegas. Mitch, the Dr. Walker.
All right, it is the Monday Night Results Show special edition. I want to welcome each and every one of you here tonight. And first off, I want to dedicate this show to all of the NASCAR legends, past and present, the ones who were there, all the heads, as me and Bill call them. This show is dedicated to you. All right, let's kick it off like we normally do with our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. We're going to do something we have never done before. Tonight, there will be no results. There will be no news. This is a show that is dedicated to the history of NASCAR and how NASCAR got started. I do have a couple of things I want to touch on real quick before we jump into all of that. Josh Fields, young man who you've heard his name a lot here on the show lately. Crate driver who's really stepped up Easter weekend at North Georgia Speedway and has stepped up a couple of times since then and really helped us out. Come on as a guest on the show. Josh got his first crate win Saturday night up at 411 Motor Speedway. So congratulations to Josh Fields and the Josh Fields racing team. I know they are just as tickled as punch on the first win. Also, it may not be racing, but it is still a motorsport. And he was a very dear friend of mine. This past weekend, the aeronautical world lost probably one of the best stunt pilots around, Greg Connell. He was killed in a crash during an air show at DeKalb Peachtree Airport in Atlanta, when his Wolf Pitts was unable to recover from a dive and he made contact with the ground. Greg died doing what he loved to do, fly airplanes. He's going to be missed, a pioneer in the sport, over almost 30 years of stunt flying, probably one of the nicest guys you could ever meet. He's flying in the big sky now. Greg Connell, pilot out of Augusta, Georgia, passed away this weekend. All right, now let's jump straight into what we've got going on tonight. To give you a brief rundown, CMT, Country Music Television, created a mini-series that is called NASCAR, The Rise of American Speed. It started 2 weeks ago on May the 8th. It aired last night, and it will air again next Sunday night. This show is from Stephen David Entertainment and NASCAR Media Group. As the movie kicked in, the first show was dedicated to the early years of racing and how it got started. There were some inconsistencies in some of the things that they took liberties with, and that is one of the things that we're going to address tonight. And we're also going to touch on the way NASCAR has tried to sterilize the history of NASCAR. And we are going to tell it like it really happened. There's going to be some interesting stories told tonight. It's going to be me and the legendary Bill Blair. One-on-one, me and Bill for 2 hours. All of you that are tuning in to listen to Bill Blair, I promise you, you will not be disappointed. So we're going to step out, take a quick commercial break, and when we come back, we're going to jump in both feet, and we're going to make a big splash with Mr. Bill Blair. It's the Monday Night Results Show special edition with your host, me, Mitch Walker. They call me the Doctor, exclusively right here on the Performance Motorsports Network.
You own a performance car and you know how to drive, but you want to learn real performance driving. Well, Bunky, get that car off the street and onto the track. Summit Point Motorsports Park, the Mid-Atlantic's premier road racing facility, located just over an hour from D.C. in nearby Summit Point, West Virginia, is the place to go. And you'll find that Friday at the Track is going to give you what you need. For less than a monthly car payment, you can attend this regularly scheduled one-day instructional event in your street car on one of Summit Point's 3 world-class road racing circuits. You'll receive classroom instruction, skid pad instruction in their cars, including front and rear skid control, and 4 20-minute in-your-car instructional sessions from a professional instructor. Have fun, go fast, and really learn how to drive. Call 304-725-8444 for class schedules and details. That's 304-725-8444. Friday at the Track at Summit Point Motorsports Park.
Green light. Hey girl, school zone. I'm getting hungry. Car changing lanes. You want to meet me for pizza? Stop sign. Intersection clear. Yeah, street. Pizza sounds good. Ball in street? Girl in street!
It's hard to concentrate on 2 things at once, like texting and driving. Stop the text, stop the wrecks. How will you stop texting and driving? Tell us at stoptextstoprex.org. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Here's an important message from RAD and this station.
Hi, this is Bob Sheehan from Blues Traveler for RAD, recording artists against drunk driving. I like to party just as much as the next guy, maybe even more, but the one thing I won't do after I've had a few is get in the car and drive. Don't blow it. Always choose a designated driver. Remember, music lives, and so should you.
Motorsports sales professionals. Performance Motorsports is looking to build a team of experienced media sales professionals to represent our programming to the industry's top companies, magazines, and racing series. If you have motorsports sales or marketing experience, know how to work with agencies, understand social media, and are incredibly creative when it comes to working with clients and promotions, then we want to hear from you. Top performers are richly rewarded. Your imagination is the only limit here. Call 717-749-0444. That's 717-749-0444, or email us at scorpionradiogroup@gmail.com. You want to ask for Sue.
Just the facts and none of the bull.
Radio edit.
It's the Monday Night Results Show with the Doctor, only on the Performance Motorsports Network.
All right, and what a perfect segue. You want facts? We got facts. We're going to be presenting those tonight. Let me preface this right here. NASCAR posted this on their NASCAR.com. I'm going to read it verbatim, and then I'm going to introduce our guest. Each week, millions of NASCAR fans, a massive television and digital audience, tune in to watch NASCAR Sprint Cup events. And today, CMT announced an unprecedented 6-hour, 3-night special event dedicated to the fearless men who took stock car racing out of the backwoods and into the national spotlight with the show NASCAR: The Rise of American Speed. Film footage, archive footage, reenactments, and interviews with NASCAR personalities and experts, including Dale Jr., Jeff Gordon, Kevin Harvick, Matt Kenseth, Brad Keselowski, Kyle Larson, Joey Logano, Richard Petty, Tony Stewart, and Darrell Waltrip. Of those, the only ones that know anything would be Richard Petty, Darrell Waltrip, Dale Jr. because he is a history buff, and Tony Stewart. The rest of them, I don't know why they're in there. But it is what it is. And the first episode, which aired last week, they took great liberties with a lot of the stories that happen. The one of Lloyd C is one of them. We're going to talk about those tonight. And the gentleman that we're going to be talking to, the last voice of the people who were actually there, the legendary Mr. Bill Blair. Bill, how are we doing tonight, buddy?
I'm doing fine. Doing real good.
Well, you know, after the conversations you and I have had for the past week or so, and some of the research that I have done and dug things up, you know, the deeper you go into NASCAR, the more liquor you find.
Well, that's true. That's just the way it was back then. There was not a lot of money. You know, after the Depression, then World War II, and those good old Scotch-Irish guys, they brought it to this country, and this is the way of life and way of extra money. So there was a lot of liquor around, a lot of hauling moonshine. And, you know, as far as my daddy and his involvement in it, he just liked to do it for the challenge, but that's how he paid for his racing endeavors, really, was hauling moonshine and selling bonded liquor. So, I mean, you go across the whole spectrum of all the drivers back in those days, I would say more than 50% of them were involved in one way, shape, form of hauling liquor, especially in the 40s.
You know, there was a racetrack down here around Atlanta called Lakewood Speedway that Frank Christian was the promoter of the first race that they ran, the stock cars. And this is from my understanding and my research, he was driving home to his home up in Dawson County, and seen a bunch of guys down in the field making laps in moonshine cars, and he noticed that a lot of people was coming out after church on Sundays to watch these guys. And he got the bright idea that he was going to take and put on a show down there at Lakewood Speedway, and took a big chance and rented the racetrack or the fairgrounds for a day and put on a race. And lots of things started from that point, but that was a real kicking off point, racing in a semi-organized fashion, wasn't it?
Well, it could have, but the problem is, if you talk to people up north, New Jersey and Pennsylvania, they think that stock car racing started up there, and they have issues of saying it started down here. I've always said, being what it was when you had the fairground tracks, and when Henry Ford come out in 1932 with that Ford V8 60 horsepower, I think it started simultaneously up down the coast. And so I know the guys around Dawsonville says it started down there. I've heard Tim Flock, he's told me personally that it started in a cow pasture, that they went out with a grader and scraped them out of place to race. And who knows? Back in those days, Doc, there were no records kept, and very little information still exists because most of these people are gone. They're dead. So there's not anything much that exists that you can pick up and read. Where did it start? I mean, you go to Daytona Beach, and Henry Ford and all those guys that made the automobiles, they shipped them down here by rail. I think Flagler built a railroad down through Florida, and shipped them by rail. And out of Daytona, he built that big hotel down there, the Flagler Hotel, and they had challenge races. They'd race down the beach for about a mile around a drum or a barrel and back. And then you had the Vanderbilt Cup up in New York, early 1900s, 1903 or so. In a lot of places, they raced from town to town as a distance race in all kinds of weather. But where did it start? That would be pretty hard to prove.
I agree, and you know, it's one of the things that, even though if you trace NASCAR back, I mean, you get back and you get into different sanctioning bodies that were involved in NASCAR before it actually became NASCAR, and you look at a lot of the races that they had. One of the obstacles that they had, I feel back then, was the lack of organization in some of these, and you know, you had your different organizations that would run different rules, but the one common denominator among all of them was these men who were real men, who got out there and done it not because they were making millions of dollars from it like some of the drivers today. They got out there and done it because it was a way of I heard Junior Johnson say one time that him running moonshine really opened the door for him when he started racing, because when all these other guys were spending money practicing and trying to learn how to do it, he already knew how. So it give him a heads up on them. And I think that these guys, these real men back in the day, they really had an upper hand on them, whether they be from up north or down south or wherever the case may be. But these guys got out there and they put blood, sweat, and tears into these cars, and to get out there and put on a show and just have fun and get to do something that was legal for a change.
Well, that would apply to all of them, including my daddy and the Flock brothers and just on and on. I mean, these guys started racing before Junior Johnson ever thought about it. He didn't come on the scene until they had the haulers up at North Wilkesboro just to have a Wilkes County race, and it was not race cars, it was just their street cars or whatever they're using, and that's how Junior got involved. And incidentally, I got to watch that, still remember it. And my daddy wrecked a car up there that same day, and Junior brought it back to High Point on a flatbed truck. And that's the first time I remember actually talking to Junior. And I was a kid, and I just said, hey, that's about it. But they all loved to race. I know my mother said many times that my daddy'd do anything just to race, and he did. And I think a lot of those guys, they just loved it. And, you know, they got addicted to it. And I guess you see people that can't quit smoking cigarettes, and I guess that's the way it is with stock car racing. I've been messing with it since I was a kid, and I'm, 70-some years old now, and I'm still messing with it. It's just something you love to do.
I think, Bill, one of the things that has impressed me over the years, and I went to my very first race that I remember, Boyd Speedway, right outside of Chattanooga, Tennessee. They had a big race up there the weekend of the Atlanta race. And used to, a lot of the NASCAR drivers came to Boyd's and would run on Saturday night and then haul back to Atlanta and run on Sunday. And I remember meeting Bobby Allison when he was just a young pup. I mean, in 1964 or 1965, I remember seeing him, and it's like just the day or two before that, I had seen his picture in a magazine, so I knew who he was. And he walked by, and I said, "Hi, Mr. Allison," and I will never forget it. He ruffled my hair, and he said, "Hey there, young man, you come to watch some racing?" And I just nodded my head. I was in awe that he actually spoke to me, and he walked on down through the pits and got in the car and raced that night. And it was events like that I guess got me hooked on it, and I've been hooked on it ever since. And I just turned 57, so I guess that would be getting close to 55 years.
Well, Doc, my first race was 1940 at the High Point Speedway, and Bill France was driving a Graham that belonged to Raymond Parks, and Lloyd C. won the race, and my daddy in it, and Daddy had another car. He let Bob Flock drive, and it got towed up. But I've been going to them ever since. Of course, the war stopped it, and I was young, and I don't remember everything, but what I do remember is that our first farm, Clover Hill Farms, was on Lexington Avenue, which was Highway 29, right north of High Point. High Point's now expanded and has incorporated that, but all the drivers and cars would stop at the dairy, and they'd get free milk. If they wanted to spend the night, they could. And I can tell you today the color of the cars, the numbers, and later on when I got in the third grade, all I could do was draw race cars and talk about racing, and the teacher failed me in the third grade because of that. And so, that's all I've ever done. And you mentioned a while ago the racing organizations, and that's true. There were all kinds of little organizations, and then a lot of tracks didn't even sanctioned by anybody. They just put a race on, and I still got envelopes with promoters from Virginia, Wistful, Virginia, and different tracks where they asked my daddy if he'd send a pitcher and come to race, and some of them even told him they'd give him a little money for gas to come. And then he raced, for the Dixie Circuit. There's a Carolina Circuit. Bruton Smith had one. And of course, Bill France had the NCSCC that he started right after the war. And France co-promoted with a lot of other sanctioning groups. In fact, he co-sanctioned with Sam Nunes of AAA, always at Atlanta and Langhorne, Pennsylvania. And I've got a trophy that my daddy won at Atlanta Lakewood Speedway that's got Sam Nunes' name on it. And then another one from Vernon, New York's got Ed Otto's name on it.
Well, I'll tell you what, Bill, hold that thought. We're going to step out for a quick commercial break, and when we come back, I want to remind you about something about Lakewood. Don't go nowhere, everybody. It's the special edition of the Monday Night Results Show with my special guest, Mr. Bill Blair, and myself, the Dr. Mitch Walker, exclusively right here on the Performance Motorsports Network.
Okay, so Sarah, I'm dropping you off at Emily's?
Yep.
And Josh, you're going to?
Soccer, Dad. Soccer practice.
Right. Oh, by the way, I just wanted to let you know when I pick you both up, I'll be wearing my short shorts.
What?
No!
Yep, and my dorky dad hat, and I'm gonna do my dad dance for all your friends. They'll love it!
Seriously? Why?
Because I like my short shorts. Of course, I could be talked out of it if you guys would just buckle up your seatbelts without giving me a hard time.
It's important to get your kids to buckle up for safety, no matter what it takes. And sometimes, all it takes is your parental powers of persuasion.
Okay, we're buckling up.
See, all buckled.
Good choice. I'll just have to do my dad dance at dinner time.
What?
No!
Do what you have to make sure your kids are wearing their seatbelts, even on short drives. Never give up until they buckle up. A message from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council. Visit safercar.gov/kidsbuckleup for more information.
Parents, your son or daughter has had their license for a while now, but you want to make sure they're prepared for any situation they may face on the road. High school driver's ed doesn't teach them to drive defensively. They need to be prepared for any highway emergency. For less than a month's insurance, and a whole lot less, BSR instructors at Summit Point Motorsports Park in nearby Summit Point, West Virginia, will teach your son or daughter how to respond instantly and positively to unexpected situations on the road. BSR's specialized accident avoidance training teaches swerve to avoid maneuvers at highway speed, ocular driving, which focuses driving attention on ways to avoid accidents, vehicle dynamics and feedback, skid control and skid recovery, threshold braking on straights and progressive braking on curves, and off-road recovery techniques. This is stuff driver's ed simply doesn't teach. So call BSR today, 304-725-8444. Give your kid the skill set needed to drive safely and responsibly on the highway. That's 304-725-8444.
This is a test to find out if you know it all when it comes to children. Name one of the leading killers of U.S. children age 1 to 13. What's the best way to protect children in a car crash? At what age and size should a child start using a booster seat?
Don't assume you know it all when it comes to car seats for your child. Go to safercar.gov/the-right-seat and know for sure. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Flag-to-flag coverage? We don't need no stinking flag-to-flag coverage. The results, and nothing but the results. Now back to the doctor.
All right, welcome back. Now, Bill, I know right before we went to break, you were talking about your dad winning a race down at Lakewood in Atlanta. And, research is a wonderful thing. And after I talked to you last night, I was doing quite a bit of research. And I found something that I found really interesting. In the racers that raced at Lakewood, there were 2 drivers that had 2 wins each at Lakewood. That was Herb Thomas and Buck Baker. And there was 6 drivers who had 1 win each. That was Donald Thomas, Junior Johnson, Johnny Beauchamp, Tim Flock, Lee Petty, and we'll talk more about that one later, Curtis Turner, and some guy driving an Oldsmobile named Bill Blair.
Yeah, he did. The car.
That was April the 20th, 1952. He started 7th and won the race.
Well, back in those days, the cars they started out being strictly stock, in 49 over at New Charlotte Speedway. And then next year they changed them to being Grand National. It was a Grand National race. And he always, well, not always, but for a couple of years they ran Oldsmobiles with Hubert Westmoreland out of Burleson, North Carolina, working on them. And prior to that weekend at Atlanta, the previous weekend they had ran Martinsville. And supposedly there's a big argument up there. I was there, and I know they did argue, but they give the race to Dick Raffman, and I guess they sent the scoring cards back to NASCAR. But many people there said that Bill in the Oldsmobile won it. And what happened, he and Fonny got into it, and Fonny wanted to beat and bang a little bit, so my daddy just turned him over. And Fonny was driving for Frank Christian in that 50 Oldsmobile red and black coupe. And, of course, running that close, I said my daddy turned him upside down, but Fonny probably helped himself a whole lot. But they got along always. Flock boys are just good guys, real racers. And they learned it on the highway, too. They didn't have to go to the racetrack and practice. They were just that good. But anyway, it was rough and tumble back then on the racetracks. The racetracks were primarily dirt, and by midway through the race, they began to beat out. You'd have holes 6 inches to a foot deep, and you'd break axles and spindles, and sometime your car would be going into the corner sideways and hit one of those holes, and somebody be right close to you. Anything can happen, but you watch those guys, Doc, run side by side sometime and never touch one another, and they were that good. And those cars were real dogs to drive. I mean, you look at the stuff they got today and then look at those cars, and they didn't begin to do much about shock absorbers until, about 52, 53, and that was like draining the fluid out of them, putting motor oil in them just to make them stiffer. And, stuff was heavily regulated by NASCAR as to what you could do. And you remember the first race at the New Charlotte Speedway in 49, Hubert Westmoreland had a 46 Ford over there, and it had a helper spring on the rear for it was a bootleg car. And it stayed over there all week and, qualifying and practice. Nobody said anything about it until after it ended up winning the race after two other cars another car had fallen out, which was my daddy's Lincoln. Then they disqualified him, and then a lawsuit by Hubert. He sued Bill France and NASCAR because of that spring. They had disqualified him. And post-race is, that's when they disqualified him, and so the court ruled in France's favor. But that's just a little bit the way it was, and I guess the movie that we saw last week showed a little bit of racing on the dirt, but not a whole lot, and I think that was some of it was at Langhorne, Pennsylvania. But you were asking about the early days and the movie that was just released by NASCAR. I haven't decided if it was a documentary or a movie, and I guess a little bit of both. And I've got a lot of emails from people asking me what I thought about it. And if you'll give me just a minute, I'll tell you what I think about it.
Man, you got 2 hours to talk, Bill. We got a whole show to fill. We ain't got no time limits tonight.
Well, let's talk about that movie just a minute.
All right.
It's a story, no doubt about it. And I guess this story's been told time and time and time again. And if they keep on telling it, one day somebody that doesn't know any better, they're going to believe it. The problem, as I see it, that there's other people that were involved, and they got, they can add to that story. Not to say that what they're trying to tell you is wrong, but it just happens to be incomplete. And that's my opinion. And I guess that my view is this, that, my daddy built a racetrack in 1947 right up here in High Point, North Carolina, called Tri-City Speedway, and he sanctioned it by Bill France. And I think my daddy and Bill France were friends. They got along good together. My daddy thought a lot of him. And he met him before the war, and that was at High Point Speedway. And Bill France, I told you a while ago, had wrecked that Graham. And they become friends, and France was one of the guys. And I think that's really why the guys stuck with him rather than other organizations. But having said that, I as a kid got to observe and watch these guys at the racetrack, and then through the week, and especially around Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, they would start, if they're going to race up in this part of the country, like Greensboro Fairgrounds or over at Winston-Salem at that fairground track over there, they would come by the farm because mother would feed them, and they could sleep in that pin oak grove over there. You know, the only place you slept around here in High Point, they had a hotel. And I remember Fonny Flock staying at the hotel, and my daddy would go down and get him because they'd leave the cars hooked up. But I got to meet those guys, and they were really my idols back then, and they were my heroes, so to speak. And in those days, you had the B Western Stars, Lash LaRue, Sunset Carson, Gene Autry, and you had the race car drivers. And Fonny Flock was one of the most popular ones. I think Fonny was probably the first real ambassador to stock car racing. He'd come early, and he'd go to the radio stations and talk. And my brother-in-law was a station manager at MFR for years, and he had a program. And in the afternoon, Fonny, Bill France, and my daddy, sometimes Jimmy Lou Allen, they'd go down about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and it was an hour program. And it was a program that Frank Smith, an announcer, had, and he was also the manager. And they'd talk about stock car racing. And I'd go with them, and, of course, I'd sit in a little room there and watch them. But my daddy didn't go nowhere that I didn't go, because I made sure that I was right with him all the time, because I just loved it. And, you know, I played Cowboys and Indians too, but racing was my main thing. And my third-grade teacher would tell you that. She failed me. But anyway, I just reckon really the story that I saw may be a little bit different, being I was here, and it happened different in other parts of the country. I know Dawsonville to Atlanta was heavily involved with Bill France and stock car racing. And in fact, I think that the way I understand that Red Vault and Raymond Parks had already were fixing to start an organization. They were going to name it NASCAR. And France asked them to hold off and come to the Streamliner down at Daytona Beach. They was going to have a big meeting. So, you know, in preparing what I want to tell you, I got to observe a lot of that stuff. And in later years, you know, I kept on going to races and working for Jim Pascal all through the 50s, and I really saw a lot of it firsthand. And some of the guys I met were very impressive to me. I just thought Joe Wolf was one of the smartest guys I ever saw, and that he had the Hollywood Speed Shop, that number 47 car that Fonny Flock drove. But anyway, in looking at all that through the years, back then it wasn't real important. It was more or less a day-to-day thing or a week-to-week thing. And people would be calling all the time, asking my daddy to come and race at their track. And, you know, Virginias and Carolinas especially. In other words, he run at all the tracks. He even ventured up north, run Dover, Delaware, somewhere up in New Jersey, went to New York, went to Phoenix, Arizona one time. He didn't let no grass grow under his feet, and he was a young man. But he, you know, let me go with him. I was towing a race car when I was probably 12, 13 years old. I didn't have no driver's license, but he'd get sleepy and let me drive. And, of course, you didn't have the law out there like you got today. And I went to sleep one time coming from Langhorne, Pennsylvania, with a 52 O's and that 53 O's tied to the back of it, and a Greyhound bus woke me up. It met me, and it scared the heck out of me. But I didn't sleep no more. I got to Baltimore, and Jimmy Lou Allen caught up to him, and we stopped. And he said, follow him through Baltimore so we wouldn't get lost. And he run a red light, and I run it too, and the cops got us. And my daddy woke up, wondering what's going on. But that's just some of the stuff, you know, I saw, and the reason that I can add to this story that maybe they're trying to tell. And, you know, you can take issues with it. I look at this deal that they had last week. Maybe they're trying to distance themselves from moonshine, white liquor, and bonded liquor, and the guys that played a part in it. And it looked to me like they was trying to make Bill France out to be something that he really wasn't, meaning that when he told Junior Johnson that, or after Junior got caught at the steel, he made a statement that there'll never be another moonshiner that'll burn him, or he won't let another burn him. I doubt that Bill France ever said that, and That just don't sound like it to me. And, from what I understand, it was the other way around, perhaps. Look at what Raymond Parks did for him, and the guy up here in North Wilkesboro. And as far as moonshine's concerned, had it not been for that business, perhaps somebody else would be promoting races now rather than Bill France, because look at the tracks that Moonshine built. The Tri-City Speedway was built for liquor money. Wilkesboro, New Charlotte Speedway, Martinsville. And you're talking about getting burnt. Sam Rice, he had the grading equipment. He married a lady that was a widow, and her ex-husband, had this road building equipment. So, and Sam was a coal miner, bootlegger. He made white liquor. He was into everything. But he built the track with his equipment, and that was his third. And then the guy named Ed Lawrence owned third of it, and Clay Earls owned third of it. Well, until the day he died, he still claimed that Clay Earls and Bill France ganged up on him and stole his third of that racetrack in a poker game. And he told that story over and over again, and I was in Martinsville, Virginia about a month ago, and there's another guy up there up in years. He remembered that. He told me the same thing. And then others. I mean, a lot of people know that. So who burnt who? Wouldn't bet the bank on that being true, that he'd never let another moonshiner burn him. But in that deal about Bill France and starting NASCAR, what I thought it was about, when he'd come over to what we call the bull barn, that's on the old farm where they kept the bulls, there's a big old oak tree out there, and that's where they all congregated. In the winter months, there's big 55-gallon drums they'd put wood or coal in to stay warm. But in the summer months, during racing, they would come down and sit on stumps, and a box over there that an engine come in from Grand Corps out of Chicago, and talk about racing. And my daddy built that Tri-City Speedway in 47. France come over and talk to him and tell him and Jimmy Lou Allen and Jim Pascal and Pap White, said, y'all, if we stick together, said, we can make something of this. We'll all benefit from it. We need to stick together. And we can have bigger purses. The reason we can have bigger purses, the tracks can advertise that all the named drivers are going to be there this weekend, and they'll have a bigger crowd, and everybody will benefit. Of course, France was going to sanction it. He'd benefit too. And that was his pitch. And so I believe probably in 47 he was pitching that wherever he would go. And one thing he did do, he'd come early. He didn't show up on Sunday, the day of the race, or Saturday when they qualify, and then run the next day like at Greensboro. But he'd come take advantage of the radio station that my brother-in-law was the manager of, and he'd tell the drivers that we need to stick together. And I think France really probably worked very hard at what he was trying to do. And I guess he tried to make it as a driver, and it didn't work out too good. So maybe he thought that he ought to be a promoter. And I guess, from what I understand, maybe reading in the paper somewhere, that somehow or another the JCs failed in their endeavor to promote stock car racing at Daytona, so they talked him into it. And I guess his service station down there on Main Street was a center also for drivers and car owners to come by and sit around and talk. But that's why I guess he originally got involved in promotion. And at some point in time, he must have run up on Sam Nunes. And Sam Nunes was known with AAA to be a real good promoter. And he and France co-promoted, as I told you earlier. But that's the way that I saw that thing, and what he wanted to do as a result of a sports writer telling him that how can you have a national champion when you got it, somebody like Ed Samples, who was the 46 champion, he run here in the South, but he didn't run out west, up north, or back east somewhere. You need a national organization. And I think that's what got this deal maybe started. And so he, as I understand it, he let it be known through Speed Age magazine and telephone calls that he was going to have a meeting of all the promoters and sanction bodies, some drivers, car owners to come to Daytona and see about organizing a racing organization. And remember, back then it was NCSCC. And I guess he figured that it would maybe carry over from NCSCC and still keep that name. But anyway, having said that, I'm going to tell you something else. You remember the name Bill Tuthill?
Yeah.
Well, he promoted up in the north midgets and motorcycles. And NASCAR, of course, was not nothing said about it then. It was the NCSCC. And they went outside of Providence, Rhode Island, and ran a race up there. And I think Red Byron won it. And I guess that Tuthill probably enticed him to come up there and do that. And Tuthill claims that he's the one that suggested to Bill France that he needs to organize, somebody needs to organize all these sanctioned bodies and tracks across the country and have it all under one body with the same rules and regulations. And it was sort of patterned, I guess, maybe after AAA, because AAA was your first. But according to Tuthill, he's the guy that suggested it to Bill France. Now,
well, I tell you what, Bill, hold that thought right there. We're going to step out and take a quick commercial break. And when we come back, we'll talk a little bit more about Sam Nunes and Bill Tuthill and the sanctioning bodies and NASCAR and Bill France. It's the Monday Night Results Show special edition with my special guest, Mr. Bill Blair. My name's Mitch Walker. They call me the Doctor, exclusively right here on the Performance Motorsports Network.
How to be a great dad in 15 seconds. Bike ride, go fish, walk in the park, phone call, milkshake, play catch, picnic, fly a kite, tell jokes, laugh, talk, read a story, tell a story, bumper car, swing set, bowling, pillow fight, cut loose, stay tight. Whew. Because the smallest moments can have the biggest impact on a child's life. Take time to be a dad today. Call 877-4DAD-411 or visit fatherhood.gov. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
Media sales professionals with agency experience. If you're frustrated with your current position, unrealistic quotas, and inept management, if you're a sales machine and you simply will not take no as an acceptable reply, if you're looking for a rapidly growing company with unlimited sales potential for commissions in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, if you're searching for a high-tech, forward-looking, laid-back, but extremely professional organization who appreciate your skills and dedication, we have your next opportunity. Scorpion Radio Group is building a sales team of self-starters who are motivated. Your imagination is the only limit here. Call 717-749-0444 or email us at scorpionradiogroup@gmail.com. That's 717-749-0444 and ask for Sue.
You hear that? That's the sound of America's only sports car. That's right, it's a Corvette. But not just any Corvette. It's your Corvette. It's that who cares if there's traffic part of your day. And this can be you when you come to Cooper Corvettes. With 60 years of Corvettes to choose from, there's always a Corvette in your budget. And they'll service any Corvette you bring in. Cooper Corvettes on Route 1 just north of Quantico and Triangle. Call, click, or visit CooperCorvettes.com.
How to deal with someone who says that's so gay. Outsmart them.
This party is like so gay.
Totally. Excuse me, but did you ladies know the word gay used to mean happy or excited? Then it became a word used to describe gay people. Then somehow it came to mean dumb or stupid, which is how you just used it, which is not very nice.
Ew, that guy is on the football team and super smart, and he totally hates us now.
Totally.
When you say that's so gay, do you realize what you say? Knock it off. Learn more at thinkbeforeyouspeak.com.
It's the Monday Night Results Show, the internet radio show that gives you the results from your favorite racetracks. And that's it! If you're looking for a lot of happy talk and fluff, go watch NASCAR coverage on ESPN. Now, here's the Doctor.
All right, welcome back, and with us tonight, the man himself, Mr. Bill Blair. Now, Bill, we were talking about Bill Tuthill from up north and him getting together with Bill France and suggesting that they organize all the sanctioning bodies and try to come together under one big umbrella. Now go ahead with what you were saying.
Okay. What happened when they did have the meeting down there, and there's been a lot of discussion who said what and so forth, and I guess it depends on who you talk to, but I guess what we do know about the history of putting it together is that Tuthill ended up being the secretary at the suggestion of Bill France, and then turned right around, well, who's going to do the paperwork and finance it all, and Tuthill suggested Bill France, and some say it was Red Byron made that suggestion. But anyway, there was also other remarks, well, we'll be okay as long as Bill France is not in charge of it. He'll want all that. I'm going to discount all that. It's what it was and what happened. I'm just going to tell you that at that time you had other organizations, and I think that France just happened to be the man for the time, and no doubt he put a lot of hard work in it, and there's more to this story yet to be played. In 1948, now I relate back to my daddy and Bill France coming up there. He got mad at my daddy for racing a track that wasn't sanctioned in NASCAR, and that was a Bruton Smith race at Concord. And but see, NASCAR didn't sanction all races in '48, and I'm just believing that strictly stock division, which turned out to be Grand National, is what gave it a big boost with crowds and all. And maybe people were getting a little bit tired of the modifieds. Don't know that, but that if you stop and think about it and go to looking at what records are kept, that turned out to be the top level of racing. And there was an outfit in Pennsylvania or New Jersey already was running strictly stocks. France wasn't the first one to do that. And you can find that if you look it up somewhere. I've seen it before. But anyway, to make that thing national, that was the whole deal, to be all over the country. Now, AAA was all over the country, and see, Sam Nunes was representing AAA down here in the South. But there was another promoter up north. His name was Ed Otto. And Ed Otto, he was not an original member of that group at Daytona in '47 of December. And Tuthill was also a promoter up north, which he was with NASCAR, but he, as I understand it, he went to Ed Otto and got Ed Otto to come to NASCAR in I guess it's 1949. And he was probably, in my opinion, a better promoter than any of them put together. So to get him to come, my understanding is that Tuthill gave him 20% of his stock in NASCAR. And
now Tuthill went. If I remember right, Tuthill had he had 40%. France had 50%, and an attorney had 10%. Right?
That's not the way I heard it. I think France had 40, and Tuthill had 40, and that Lazinski, whatever his name was, the lawyer, had 20. And so Tuthill gave Otto half of his, which was 20%. And you go back and look and read and look at the records and talk to people that most of them's gone. You either remember it or have to look it up or talk to somebody that wrote it down or remembered it somehow or another. But Tuthill was responsible for a lot of stuff. The two main things that I can remember was that these guys started the short track division. And then another thing he did, because he was in that part of the country, him and Tuthill both, and I guess Tuthill might be responsible for this, but that's where your K&K Insurance was from, was Providence, Rhode Island, that Naughton guy.
Yeah.
He's the guy that got insurance. If you join NASCAR, your license costs you $10 to join, and as I remember, but they didn't have any kind of insurance, medical, and I think you had $1,000 a death or something like that. And they cover up to $3,000 or so in the hospital. And they kept increasing it throughout the years. I couldn't tell you what it is now, but a license is much more. But they brought a lot to the table, and I think I'm thinking somewhere when Tuthill left, he gave the other part of his share, 20%, to Otto, meaning that Otto had as much stock as France had. And later on, they never got along, as I understand it. And when Tut Hill gave his part to Otto hung around for up to the early 60s. And he was he sort of like Donald Trump. He'd tell you what he thought in a heartbeat. But he done what he said he would do. Well, anyway, when he left, I think France wanted to buy him out and take total control of it. And France offered him a little bit of money for it, and he wouldn't take it. And what he done, if you remember, when they barred Tim Flock and Curtis Turner, well, Otto threatened to sell his part, his 40%, to Curtis Turner, and Curtis had been blackballed.
Yeah.
And I'm going to bet you that got France all wound up, because he ended up paying him about $250,000 for some shares that he didn't pay nothing for.
Yeah.
Just to get him out of there. So now when they talking about what happened in this story and all, they told a story that, yeah, it happened, but it wasn't all told. And yes, having said this, records were non-existent just about. You get most of your information would be from a family member or an individual. The individual that was there is probably dead. That's what you're up against. And I feel sure that the NASCAR family now, a lot of these stories they probably don't know and never been told. And throughout the years, no doubt it's going to get less and less information about it. And I think you said earlier you'd like to try to preserve all this information. And some of the families are still living. I think some of the Ed Otto guys, his son's still living. I mentioned a guy named Bob Osiki, one of the mechanics. I talked to his son here recently. He's still living. But Little Red Vault is out in California. His daughter's in Florida. You have to go to the families now to find it out. And so that's where I get my information from through the years would be my father, my mother, my sisters. They're older than I am. And, of course, I was there. And I can remember that stuff fairly well. And I make notes a lot of times just to be sure. But you got David Soulsby, Soulsby's son. Gober won Daytona about 3 times. And Ed Samples' son is still living. There's still information out there, but Doc, in another 5-10 years, it's going to be gone.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I think that one of the things I'm passionate about, and when I watched the first show, I seen a lot of things in there, and after my research that I've done over the years on different things for my show, the one thing that kind of got me was Lisa Kennedy, who is Bill Jr.'s daughter, Brian France's sister. She kept saying, my dad and my grandfather's vision for NASCAR. And you and I talked about this last night. I mean, based on what I seen and the way everything was going about, I don't think his vision was any longer than from one Saturday to the next. I mean, that's looking back on it, it may be, but at the time.
AAA set the standard.
Yeah.
And a lot of what they did was what AAA did. They didn't invent anything new. In some little areas, maybe they did, but basically the point system, and that's a good deal. That keeps all your good drivers coming to your track so you can promote it, that you got all the top drivers there, and yes, it does benefit everybody. But Bill France didn't invent that. It was more or less suggested to him, and I sort of do think that Ted Hill was heavily involved in it. And then when they brought Otto in on the deal, he would have been very instrumental in bringing a lot of those tracks up north and out west into NASCAR to make it a national organization. And, I think that in 1950 when Ed Otto really got going, 50, 51 too, that's when NASCAR really blossomed. That's the time that you had the your Grand National divisions, and that become the main deal. And then your modifieds. I know Bill France called my daddy up after that Charlotte race over there and told him to sell his modified, that the future was going to be the strictly stock cars. And my daddy sold his race car, sold that 39 modified Ford. And, of course, he raced for about another 4 or 5 years. And of course, those guys who raced before the war, then they served in the war. My daddy went to Baltimore, built battleships, and most of all your stock car drivers, and even some of your moonshiners, they went off to fight for the country. And, of course, the tracks more or less shut down because your gas and tires were all rationed. You had those stamps, But so the Grand National cars is, I guess that they had to do that, Doc, because I'm thinking, remember this, my daddy told it many times, that France actually called Ford Motor Company and see if they would build some more 39 standard coupes. And Ford, I guess, was very nice to him, telling him that they wasn't in the business of building old cars. They was in the business of building new cars. And so his next thing was, well, what are we going to do? And they had a trial run somewhere in Florida to see what people would think about them. They run a few laps down there, and the crowd really liked it. So if you go to the Charlotte Observer, Todd Morris and I went over there to look for this. The only mention about that first strictly stock race was one time in the Charlotte Observer, and it said an experiment by Bill France. The next thing printed about it was nothing but the lawsuit between Hubert Westmoreland and Bill France. It did not tell you who won the race or nothing. So the next deal was they went to Daytona Beach. Now, over at Charlotte, they had a big crowd. France told Taylor Warren from High Point to make a picture of all those people coming across the backstretch. And he was so thrilled about that. And he told him that he wanted that picture to put over his headboard. That's the first thing he wanted to see when he got up in the morning, and the last thing he saw at night when he went to bed. And, of course, went to Daytona, and, people come through the palmettos down there and get in for free. So I don't think he done real well there. But the third race that really put him over the hump, and he put a big emphasis on promoting that race, was down at Hillsboro, Occoneechee, and I think they had about 19,000 people, and that convinced him that was the way to go, and that's when he called my daddy and told him to sell that modified, man. Said this is the future. And that really, just my opinion, once again, that's what propelled Bill France in NASCAR. And then throughout the years, you get a picture of what happened better than I can. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, Bill, I think that is a real good spot to take a pause right there and do a little plug for the reunion, the big shindig y'all have over there at Orange County, Occoneechee, coming up this October.
Sure.
It's what is it, October 1st this year?
It's October the 1st, Mitch, October the 1st. And they're going to have a big show. It's going to be a one-day event. It'll start that morning, probably 7, 8 o'clock. There'll be people there to show you where to park. It's all free. There'll be a lot of your early day racers there. The honorees this year is Ned Jarrett and Curtis Turner. Some of the Curtis Turner family will be there. Ned will be there. The race cars will be there. They'll go around the track right after lunch. They'll make some parade laps. There'll be vendors there. There'll be another car show there with your classic cars, and it'll be a judge show. And then late that afternoon, starting at about 6 o'clock at the barn, there's going to be an event called Trading Paint, and it's a banquet. And it's $25. It's catered. It'll have chicken and beef briskets and all the trimmings. 6 o'clock is when it opens. You'll have a free social hour, wine, beer, just for a tip. And then at 7, they will introduce honorees and then serve your meal. And immediately after that, there'll be some more introductions of the Curtis Turner family, honoring Curtis Turner, and then Ned Jarrett. and Ned will give us a little talk about his early day racing careers and about his races at Hillsborough. And then after that, there'll be a question and answer period. Rex White will be there and some other drivers, and the fans can talk to them, get autographs, and ask questions. And then after all that is over, there'll be some picking and a grinning, bluegrass and what country western. It'll probably wind down about 10 o'clock.
Well, man, I tell you what, that right there's that's slick right there. I plan on making it this year. I confirmed this morning that I had already asked for that weekend off, and North Georgia Speedway don't have nothing going on that weekend, so even if they did, they would have to find a substitute announcer because the doctor is going to Occoneechee this year. Bill, we're going to step out and take a quick commercial break, and when we come back, we'll talk about a little bit more about some of the sanitization of NASCAR by the NASCAR Media Group and some of the other things going on. It's the Monday Night Results Show special edition with my very special guest, Mr. Bill Blair. My name's Mitch Walker. They call me the doctor, exclusively right here on the Performance Motorsports Network.
Motorsports sales professionals. Performance Motorsports is looking to build a team of experienced media sales professionals to represent our programming to the industry's top companies, magazines, and racing series. If you have motorsports sales or marketing experience, know how to work with agencies, understand social media, and are incredibly creative when it comes to working with clients and promotions, then we want to hear from you. Top performers are richly rewarded. Your imagination is the only limit here. Call 717-749-0444. That's 717-749-0444, or email us at scorpionradiogroup@gmail.com. You want to ask for Sue.
Every 30 minutes, another innocent person is killed due to a drunk driver.
My best friend. My brother. My poor grandchild.
My sister.
My father. My husband.
My mom. My mommy.
Well, I've been afraid of changing, 'cause I've built my life around you.
Stop these tragedies before they happen. Don't drink and drive.
Do you love the sound of high-revving motors and the smell of burning rubber? Do you want to get your car sideways right at the ragged edge of control? If you've always wanted to try drifting or learn to improve your drifting skills, Summit Point Motorsports Park, the Mid-Atlantic's premier motorsports facility, has the expert instructors and the specialized track to teach you how to drift and the skills necessary to drift competitively. From skid pad to open sessions, Summit Point Motorsports Park has the safe and open environment that allows drifters of all skill levels, new to intermediate, to get sideways and smoking. With a focus on safety and the skill set necessary to drift competitively, Summit Point Motorsports Park's Drift Nirvana is just the thing for you. Call for your reservation today, 304-725-8444. Or for more information, go online, summitpoint-raceway.com, or you can email them at office@bsrinc.com. Drift Nirvana, getting you sideways the right way.
You're listening to the Monday Night Results Show. Back-to-back results, and that's it. You want half-naked girls, singing, and sound effects? Go watch American Idol. Now, here's the doctor.
All right, welcome back. You know, we were talking with the legendary Bill Blair, who's sitting in and giving us some lessons and schooling us on some of the things that really happened in NASCAR, and talking about a little bit about how NASCAR has tried so hard to clean up their, I guess you could say, their image. And nothing could be more aggravating to a true historian, who's someone who reads the history, someone who studies the history and digs into it to find out all the intricate details that you can possibly find. And digging on the internet and through books and magazines and newspaper articles, you know, there's a lot of things that you find that the TV show NASCAR: The Rise of American Speed really took some liberties with in the first edition. Was
how they kind of told the story, but yet didn't tell the story. They kind of touched on things, like the thing with Lloyd C. And how he was killed, and that's, those things like that. That's what winds my clock. It's called selective memory. You only remember what you want to remember, and you only tell people what you want people to know. And history don't work like that. History needs to be told. It needs to be told accurately and to the best of your knowledge, to the 100% truth, not what you want people to remember. And, I think NASCAR is on the France family especially, is on a 20-year mission to eradicate the memory of NASCAR in as much as how moonshine and liquor played a part in it. And some of the people that were involved in NASCAR in the early years, and how they kind of morphed into creating a saint, out of some of these guys. And everyone puts, Big Bill France up on a pedestal, especially in the movie. They just keep talking about his vision, and how he planned this and he planned that. And, when you go back and look at it, like Bill was saying just a little bit ago, the point system, that didn't come from NASCAR. That wasn't some brainchild of his. That come from the AAA. And there's so much facts that the movie has left out. And, I watched it again last night, the second part of the show, and they were talking about the very first Daytona that CBS televised. And one of the things that really just rubbed me the wrong way was when they went through and they showed all the drivers standing in the garage area waiting to run the Daytona 500, the great American race. These guys looked like they had just crawled out from under a 1954 Peterbilt with grease all over them. Their faces were dirty. Their hair wasn't combed. And, they really portrayed them in a negative light. And that really bothers me, because I know for a fact that when these guys went to Daytona, that was the first race of the year. That was their Super Bowl. They went down there with brand new fire suits. They went down there with their hair cut. They went down there with their hair combed. They were down there to make an appearance. And for them to take and portray that in that light, but yet they elevated Bill France up to this great big pedestal and made the rest of the cast look, I guess you could say, less than spectacular. Did you notice that too, Bill?
I did, and it was a low-budget B-Western at best, is all that was.
Yeah.
You could tell one of the guys there, I think his last name was Koff or something like that, Roy Koff maybe, but I don't think he was real comfortable talking about racing, because I don't think he knew a whole lot about it. And certainly Brian and Lisa, what do they know about the early days? They've probably never seen one of those cars except maybe at the museum. But it looked very much like you had people outside of Richard now that knew nothing about that, and the only thing they knew was what they'd been told by somebody, and these so-called historians, what do they know? It's hard to tell a story if you only read it in the book and not seen it. You just don't get the same picture. I don't, and I knew what Lee Petty looked like, and I guess Richard, I don't guess he was real proud of that, but his daddy was a nice-looking person and a very likable person. He was stern and a hard worker. And I think the Pettys really was one of your first group of people, a family that, and certainly Glenn Wood, that approached stock car racing as a business. And when Pascal and my daddy finished pretty good, we stopped and get a steak. When the Pettys, I don't care where they finished, they'd eat hot dogs, basically. They preserved, and they looked at it as a business. And then he got some help starting about, 54, 55, and he began to run a lot harder. But I know he had more than one shirt, and that little picture they had of him is always the same old brown shirt. It just didn't look like Lee Petty to me, and that guy that was supposed to be Richard didn't look like Richard Petty to me. The Pettys were a lot nicer people than what they portrayed them as being, and they really are. The group, it's a real good family. And then you look at what they had Bill France. I knew what Bill France looked like. He always had that little hat on. It's got that short little brim on it.
Yeah.
My daddy had one of them in later years, and he was a big, tall guy, and he generally always wore dark shirts and dark pants. And then you look at Junior Johnson. I never seen Junior Johnson in my life in the pits at any racetrack with a liquor bottle in his hand, flirting with the women.
Yeah.
I never saw that. And he probably sees that, and he ain't going to be real happy. And then Raymond Parks always had his signature hat.
Yeah.
Wherever he went. When he was inside, of course, I guess he would take it off. I saw him down at JB Days, and he would do that. But they didn't portray these people in a good manner, in my opinion. And then, they changed clothes every day. And, I mean, you look at the movie, they had this deal. They were very dirty. Their faces dirty. Looked like they'd been out wrestling in the yard. It just didn't portray them in a good light. And I don't know what kind of picture or what they're trying to portray, but they did themselves a lot of harm in getting people to think that's the way the early days was. It wasn't. The racing uniforms of that day were generally your union-made coveralls like the Pure Company had, and the jumpsuits. Yes, some of them wore shirts and regular pants, but wasn't a lot of blue jeans back in those days. Most of it was coveralls and shirts and your regular khaki pants. The guys that I can remember, and I remember a lot of them, they were always clean. And the cars, I always kept them pretty neat. I know if you run 2 or 3 races in one weekend, it may not be real pretty, but you look at Raymond Park's cars. If he dented the fender, they put a new one on it. His cars always was in shape and always painted. And you look at what they did last week with what they showed. The cars were junk, and they were dirty. The numbers were faded on them. It's just all wrong. And why they did it that way, I don't know. But for a few dollars more, they could have really done it right. If they had went ahead and told the whole story, it'd have been just as easy to tell it the way it really was than to tell you a fairy tale.
And Bill, like we were talking last night, I've never... I understand NASCAR spends millions and millions of dollars on advertising and public relations and trying to get their name in front of as many people as they can. But, from an old country boy like myself who has spent my life around dirt tracks and all over the United States, you look at some of the screw-ups that they have made. This movie, when I first watched the first part of it, I got to looking at that and I thought, man, that just don't seem right. So I get to go and I get to digging. And I found, discrepancies here and there and with the Lloyd Say thing and the way they portrayed the Petties is, it didn't sit right with me. Well, when I go back and I go to researching the movie about who was behind the movie, the one glaring thing that jumped out at me was right dead in the middle of the screen, NASCAR Media Group. And that explained it right there because they try to twist it so that the France family looks like the great saviors of NASCAR. And I'm not discrediting Bill Sr. or Bill Jr.'s hard work because I know that if they put a lot of effort and a lot of work into what they done, and I know that they may have had a vision. I don't think it was as grandiose as Lisa Kennedy tried to make it sound on the show last night. But, he did have a desire to want to do something, but, he wasn't this big hero that was propped up on this big pedestal crapping out all these brainstorms and all these brilliant ideas. All he was doing was taking them from other sanctioning bodies and other promoters and using them himself. And that's the part that got me. It's like if you'd have told the story and told it right, it would have been great. Because if you look, if they would have capitalized on moonshine in NASCAR and how moonshine has developed, how moonshine created the liquor industry, created a lot of things in NASCAR, both tracks and promoters and what have you. And then you turn around and you look at today, The number one leading liquor sales in the United States is considered a craft whiskey, which is moonshine. You've got Junior Johnson with Cat Daddy. You've got Popcorn Sutton and his brand. You've got Dalton Distilleries right here, Chuck Butler and his dad. You've got all these different moonshine companies or liquor companies that are making moonshine the same way a lot of the moonshiners did back in the 30s and 40s, and they're making calling it a craft liquor today, and it's the number one selling liquor in the United States. And why didn't NASCAR capitalize on that and go, NASCAR knew about this years ago. That's what helped us get our start. But no, they want to keep this sanitized version. Somebody told me the other day, said, used to you go to a NASCAR race and you smelled racing fuel and burning rubber. He said, now you go to a NASCAR race and you smell antiseptic. So, it is what it is, I guess.
Yeah. Well, if you go back to the early rules, it states that, if I remember correctly, that you had to have all four fenders on the car, the hood that fit, and they wanted your car to be painted, lettered. I mean, they told you in the rule book they wanted your car to be a good-looking race car, basically, and they kept them that way. And then all the years, the car's always been colorful, and that was good. And, of course, what you saw in that movie, it was never like that. Now, you go to a track, it's not sanctioned, it's just an outlaw track where they run hobbies and amateurs and just whatever. That could happen. But if you went to a sanctioned race, whether it be NASCAR or Dixie Circuit or whatever, the cars were pretty nice race cars. And the guys, it's in the rules that you have no alcoholic beverages in the pits, and they showed right on TV that Junior Johnson had a liquor bottle in his hand. Well, they'd escort you out of the track then, and they do it now if you do that. If you get caught with an open container, you're gone. And then also, if you remember, France said that there'd never be no alcoholic beverage company or liquor company be able to sponsor a race car. He also said there'd be no foreign cars in NASCAR. And they changed all that. And I guess maybe that's for the good. We're not going to argue that, but it's like I say, it's what it is, and I don't see a problem with that. It's just that, in my opinion, if they had done their little documentary or movie that they made, it wouldn't have taken much to get that thing right, and I think the audience, the fan, would appreciate that more than what they saw. I've had a guy tell me that he was ashamed of that, and that and I'm not going to say no more than that. He was just ashamed of that deal.
Yeah.
But I can see why.
I got a big kick out of a comment that was credited to Smokey Yunick, who is I love the Smokey Yunick stories, whether there's any truth to some of them or not. But they asked Smokey Yunick what he thought of Big Bill France, and Smokey said, and this is a quote from Smokey as it was written by him. He said he had to be something special because I don't know any racers that really liked him, but we kept going back for more. France was a world-class bullshitter, and he had the balls of an elephant with regards to gambling with finances. He'd work 20 hours a day and 7 days a week if necessary. And, we've already discussed, that there was a lot of drivers that did like France, and they needed each other in this time when NASCAR was starting. France couldn't have done what he done without the drivers. The drivers couldn't have gotten to where they got without France. So it was a mutually beneficial deal for the both of them. But it was to sit back and look at it, from a historical standpoint and see the way that it was portrayed in that movie and the way some of the NASCAR PR stuff comes out today. It really gripes my butt that they do it in the way that they do it. And, it is what it is, but I'm just tickled that we've got a chance to sit down with you and
get this word out and straighten some of these things out and let people know what really happened back in the day. But I tell you what, Bill, sit tight with me. We're going to jump out and take a quick commercial break. And when we come back, we're going to dive into some more of it. It's the Monday Night Results Show, the special edition with my buddy Bill Blair, exclusively right here on the Performance Motorsports Network.
We're growing like crazy and need account reps who know their way around agencies, the internet, and social media. Got connections? Or do you know how to get to the decision makers? Are you fearless? We need you. Internet radio, or as we call it, wireless mobile radio, is rapidly becoming the place to be with almost limitless income potential. So contact us to get involved with the fastest growing professionally produced group of internet radio stations in the world. Your imagination is the only limit here. Call 717-749-0444. That's 717-749-0444. Or you can email us at scorpionradiogroup@gmail.com. You want to ask for Sue.
Okay, so Sarah, I'm dropping you off at Emily's?
Yep.
And Josh, you're going to?
Soccer, Dad. Soccer practice.
Right. Oh, by the way, I just wanted to let you know when I pick you both up, I'll be wearing my short shorts.
What?
No!
Yep, and my dorky dad hat, and I'm gonna do my dad dance for all your friends. They'll love it!
Seriously? Why?
Because I like my short shorts. Of course, I could be talked out of it if you guys would just buckle up your seatbelts without giving me a hard time.
It's important to get your kids to buckle up for safety, no matter what it takes. And sometimes, all it takes is your parental powers of persuasion.
Okay, we're buckling up.
See, all buckled.
Good choice. I'll just have to do my dad dance at dinner time. What?
No!
Do what you have to make sure your kids are wearing their seatbelts, even on short drives. Never give up until they buckle up. A message from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council. Visit safercar.gov/kidsbuckleup for more information.
If you're a gearhead and you just can't get enough of your favorite motorsports on that channel on the cable, or you look at that Guy network and you just go, what does that have to do with me? We have the answer. Performance Motorsports Network. Right here on the internet. The best cruising tunes, the best in motorsports programming, and the best shows. We have opinionated hosts, and we like it that way. If you want to get involved, if you want to bench race, be listening for information coming up soon right here on this channel, the Performance Motorsports Network, your source for motorsports.
It's the Monday Night Results Show, the internet radio show that gives you the results from your favorite racetracks. And that's it. If you're looking for a lot of happy talk and fluff, go watch NASCAR coverage on Fox TV. Now, here's the doctor.
All right, welcome back. Joining us on the show tonight, legendary Bill Blair, and we're talking the corrected history of NASCAR and some of the things that NASCAR has done over the years to improve their image. One of the things that Bill and I have talked about a few times is the way NASCAR works very hard to shape their image in a positive light. You know, when Brian France took over, the grandson of the founder, Big Bill France, when Brian took over, one of the first things he done was he tried to attract the wine and cheese crowd. That's what we refer to them as. That's the uppity ups, the people who were in the $60,000 to $70,000 a year salary range. He didn't want the people that created the sport and made it what it is today. That's the hard-working, common core, everyday fan. He didn't want those fans anymore. They were too redneck. They were too low class. He wanted the big high dollar, the big spenders. And to see what the steps that he went through to try to alienate some of the core fans that spent their hard-earned dollars just going to the races every year, to see how he just kind of, I guess, pushed them to the back burner. And seeing that what NASCAR done, it started a decline in NASCAR in the later years, and it still hasn't completely recovered. And, you know, to have Big Bill France say that there would never be any foreign car manufacturers in NASCAR. Now we have Toyota. I hear a rumor that we have Honda is looking.
I also hear that there's a German manufacturer that is looking into coming into NASCAR, and it's almost like it's got too big for its britches, don't you think, Bill?
Well, I guess we could sit and talk a long time about what's the problem today, and I'm glad I don't have to make that decision. It can't be easy looking at the economy and a number of people in the workforce now that's out of work. But I do remember in the early days that when my daddy called a local newspaper here in High Point about covering the stock car race back in 1947, they were reluctant. In fact, they didn't do it because, that we were rednecks, according to them, and the sports writers back then were all stick and ball, and it took some time and a lot of work to get them on board to start covering stock car racing. But I've noticed now in the newspaper, especially the High Point Enterprise, they hardly mention stock car racing anymore. You got to look, real hard to find it. And when you do, it's just a short article. And about the kind of people that comes to stock car racing in the early days, of course, you didn't have your lawyers and doctors and uppity-up people they didn't come. And later on, they began to find out about it, and it was a pretty good show. And you got to know, back in the 40s, that the only thing to do on the weekends was maybe go to the airport, watch the planes take off and land, and that's about it. Anything local going on. And so, as far as stock car racing, it got going after the war. And the first race up here at Tri-City had over 9. In fact, the first 3 races had over 9,000 people, which was a lot of people back in those days. Of course, the ticket wasn't but about $1.25 or $1.50 at most. But what he's doing today, I'm referring to the family there, the France family, NASCAR, Brian France. I'm thinking that Brian turns a lot of people off. In fact, I just have to tell you, when he's on TV, I like to look at something else. He just is not pleasant for me to look at. I'm just going to tell you the truth. And
well,
he's always
Bill, you and I sit here last night talking on the phone, and they replayed that movie, the second series of that movie, and we were sitting here talking on the phone, and I just happened to look up, and when I looked up, it was Brian France talking, and there's something about the way he looks. It's like he's looking down his nose at everybody. And I don't know if it's the way he holds his eyes or what it is, but it's like he never looks anybody square in the eye. And that's one of the things that really gets me. You look back through, because as a photographer myself, I always try to capture the eyes. And you look back, you look at pictures of Bill France Sr. and Bill France Jr. You've seen a lot of pictures of them where they were either looking dead at the camera or you could tell they were looking somebody in the eye. But you never, ever see that with Brian France. And that, when you go back, like you were calling them last night, a lot of the old heads, the old gearheads, the guys who formed this sport, they were men of a handshake. You shook hands, your shake was your bond. Your word was your bond. And if you didn't if your word wasn't any good, then nobody wanted to deal with you. And that's one of the things that made racing in the early days such a spectacular thing is the innovation that these guys had, and the bond, the word, their honor. And you look at what Brian France has done today, he don't even come down in the garage. Tony Stewart made a comment here back during the winter. He said, I don't ever remember Brian France ever walking down through the garage. He said, but now his dad, he said, you seen him every Sunday morning. Yeah, before the race, he walked through the garage and spoke to all the drivers. Now, some of the drivers might have been pissed at him. They might not wanted to talk to him, but he was there, and he would listen if drivers called him and wanted to talk to him for a minute. Whereas Brian, you got to get your people to talk to his people to set up a meeting of all y'all's people so that you and him can talk. And that kills the sport.
Well, it does, Doc. Bill France, I think I told you, used to go with my daddy. When my daddy make some liquor deliveries, Bill France would be there and getting that blue 41 Ford, the way they'd go, and they'd come to Main Street. France would get out and nail those posters about the Greensboro Fairground race this weekend up on the telephone pole. He always had those posters and some nails and a hammer. And Billy France knew what he sold hot dogs and stuff and drinks at Hillsboro. I still remember that concession stand. The Brian, if you give him a poster and some nails and a hammer, I guarantee you he wouldn't know which end to hit that nail on.
He'd nail it to his leg.
He said he'd have to get somebody to do it for him, and that comes across when you view him in his actions. That he's somebody that sits behind a desk and likes to tell other people what to do, and I guess that's okay in today's world. And I guess maybe he went to college and that's what he was taught, and that's his way of doing it. He's the guy that came up with the chase, isn't he?
Yeah.
Okay, and you know they needed to do something to excite the people to watch racing, and I guess I'm going to say he made a good decision there. Now, maybe I would have done it a little bit different, but yeah, overall, I think that he did help stock car racing. What I don't like about racing today is all the restarts at the end of the race. I still think they ought to line them up when there's about 20, 30 laps to go. There should not, in my opinion, be any double file restarts, because those guys, they got performance contracts, and it's all about winning the race to get in the chase. You know, second, third won't get you in the chase. So if they crash, that's okay. And just tear up a lot of equipment. I'd hate to be a car owner, especially at Daytona and what happened at Dover this weekend.
Yeah.
That part, I'd change that, because tearing up so many cars, and you go to Daytona where they're running that kind of speed, when they hurt somebody real bad at one of those super speedways, because those guys are taking chances at the last part of that race. When it hurts somebody, perhaps kills somebody, then maybe they're going to look at that a little bit different. Just my thought.
And, you know, Bill, I agree 100%. I mean, you know, promoting a race, and if you'd have told me this 10 years ago, I would have laughed at you. Promoting a race is probably one of the hardest things in the entire world. And I've learned that the past 5 or 6 years working over here at North Georgia Speedway, and being involved in getting fans in the stands and putting butts in the seats. And it's a task that it's not for the faint or the faint-hearted. I mean, I promise you that. It's something that it takes a special person to be able to be a promoter, to get out there and sell yourself. Jimmy Mostedler, who's one of my heroes, probably one of the best promoters around, him and that cigar. You look at guys that put into the sport, like you were talking about Mr. Otto, Ed Otto. You know, Ed Otto's, he greeted everybody with, "Hello, sucker." I mean, that was his way of greeting people. But people remembered him. People made note of what he'd done. And when you look at Brian France, he just looks like he's got the golden spoon shoved up his backside, and nobody pays him no mind. He don't have the respect of the people that he's leading. And that's where I think that's where the problems with NASCAR comes today is, you know, people may not have liked Big Bill France or Bill France Jr., but they respected him. And you know, you don't have to like somebody to respect them. You can like them, that's fine. But you don't have to like them to respect what they're doing and what they've done. And that's where I think that's where the apple didn't fall very close to the tree with Brian France. And yeah, he did rejuvenate some with the chase, but you know, if he hadn't have come up with a car of tomorrow, he wouldn't have needed the chase. We all have very various opinions on what NASCAR needs to go back to. I think they need to go back to a bone stock body, rock hard tires, and a 9-to-1 motor, and let the rough side drag. And yeah, it'll slow them down, but hey, it is what it is. At least it'll put it back in the driver's hands, and the cream will rise to the top. But you know, it's just, I think when you look at NASCAR as a whole today versus NASCAR 30 years ago, 40 years ago, the big thing that's missing is the respect for the top echelon. Nobody respects the management of NASCAR because they have isolated themselves so far away from the common man. They have no idea in the world what the hell is going on pit road unless they got 5 advisors standing there to tell them.
Well, Doc, remember about an hour ago I told you that the reason I feel like the guys back in the 40s went with Bill Francis' organization rather than Bruton and the Dixie and Carolina and the others was because that the guys, including my daddy, Jim Llewellyn, Jim Pascal, the Flock Boys, they felt like Bill Francis was one of them, and he was. I mean, he raced with them. He knew their hardships, all the hard knocks. They all went together and survived. If you did survive a race back then, that was a lot because you didn't have the safety equipment that you got today. And a lot of those guys got burned up, backs broke, necks broke. They got hurt bad. And France had been there with these guys. And so when they hurt, he hurt. He felt for them. And I guess to some extent Billy was like that. But you couldn't say Brian's like that. And I think that may be. And I guess times has changed, Doc, because you can't keep on doing the same thing. I guess if you built a new house, you wouldn't have outdoor plumbing today. But still, we're old heads, and we don't view it that way like they do it today. Now, the new race fan, he probably don't know any better. It's what it is with him. And he probably goes to work in a roundabout in a Kia or Saturn or Lexus, and he's not connected like we were connected. If your parents back then were Ford guys, you was going to be a Ford guy. If they were Chevrolet, you was going to be a Chevrolet. It's just a different deal, and like I said earlier, I'd hate to make those decisions. Now, me and you, Tim Lemon, Dargan Watts, and 100 more could sit down and try to figure this deal out, and we'd probably make a mess of it. But, and that's what we got now, so it wouldn't be any improvement. I don't guess it would be any unimprovement. But I'd hate to make those decisions. The thing I would do, as I mentioned a while ago, I'd do something about the restarts at the end of the race so we could quit tearing up cars. And I'd probably go to Daytona and dig it and plow it up and make a road course out of those. I think they're white elephants. Somebody's going to get hurt bad again down there one of these days, and then what are they going to do? So Another thing I want to mention to you, when we was talking about this little movie and documentary they did here last week in the early days, and trying to make the Moonshine guys look like they were the bad guys in this deal. They're over here at the NASCAR Hall of Fame now. You buy a T-shirt, hats, drinking glasses. They got Moonshine wrote all over them. And I guess they found out there's $1 to be made there. In order to tell them that that ain't all bad news, so why try to change it, You know what I'm saying? Yeah. They didn't have to do what they did last weekend.
Yeah. Now, one thing that mine and your buddy Todd Morris has shot me a few messages during the show, and one thing that I do want to let people know about is a little video that you guys done. If you want to go to YouTube and search for Our Racing Heroes Return to Daytona. Now, when you do that, that is a little trip down memory lane, and you get to see the legendary Bill Blair himself, and kind of put a face with the voice that you hear on the Monday Night Results Show every now and then. And go check that out. We're coming up against a break real quick, and when we come back, this will be the last segment of the show. We're going to dedicate the last segment of the show to Mr. Bill Blair. We're going to talk a little bit about Bill Blair and some of the things that he has done, his involvement in drag racing, some of his engine building talents, and some of the things that he has done. And we're going to kind of make Bill toot his own horn just a little bit. So sit tight, don't go nowhere. We're going to step out for a quick commercial break. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit more with the legendary Bill Blair. It's the Monday Night Results Show, the special edition with my very special guest, Mr. Bill Blair. My name is Mitch Walker. They call me the Doctor, and you'll find us exclusively right here on the Performance Motorsports Network.
I'm NASCAR driver Bobby Labonte. At 200 miles per hour, many unseen dangers can arise in the blink of an eye. That's why we have spotters high above the track. They help drivers avoid trouble. Parents need to play the same role when it comes to kids and computers. As a parent, I know the internet can take kids to wonderful sites for learning, entertainment, and fun, but it can also lead to danger.
Here are some safety tips. Keep the computer in a family area where you can see it. Proactively teach your children never to share personal information online.
My turn.
Become knowledgeable about signing on to websites, searching for information, and using email and instant messaging. Doing so will help you recognize potential dangers. Familiarize yourself with safer websites and post that list by your computer.
Like our spotters, parents are best positioned to see the dangers kids could face online and to help them avoid them. Make a commitment to keeping kids safe online.
A message from WebWise Kids and Ask.com.
You own a performance car and you know how to drive, but you want to learn real performance driving. Well, Bunky, get that car off the street and onto the track. Summit Point Motorsports Park, the Mid-Atlantic's premier road racing facility, located just over an hour from D.C. in nearby Summit Point, West Virginia, is the place to go. And you'll find that Friday at the Track is going to give you what you need. For less than a monthly car payment, you can attend this regularly scheduled one-day instructional event in your street car on one of Summit Point's 3 world-class road racing circuits. You'll receive classroom instruction, skid pad instruction in their cars, including front and rear skid control, and 4 20-minute in-your-car instructional sessions from a professional instructor. Have fun, go fast, and really learn how to drive. Call 304-725-8444 for class schedules and details. That's 304-725-8444. Friday at the Track at Summit Point Motorsports Park.
Travel is part of the American way of life.
When we're on vacation, we keep an eye out for anything that looks out of place.
Miss your bag.
When we travel from city to city, we pay attention to our surroundings.
Everyone plays a role in keeping our communities safe.
Whether you're traveling for business or pleasure, be aware of your surroundings. If you see something suspicious, say something to local authorities.
Hi, this is Ozzy Osbourne. For many years, you know I've had a drink problem and I'm trying to battle that problem every single day. But one thing I don't drive my car when I'm drinking. I get someone to drive me. Do not drink and drive. It's the stupidest thing. If you drink, just don't drive. Not only are you going to hurt yourself, you may hurt some other person, and you wouldn't want that on your conscience, would you?
A public service announcement brought to you by the U.S. Department of Transportation, RAD, the National Association of Broadcasters, and the Ad Council.
It's the Monday Night Results Show. The name says it all. Now back to your host, the Doctor.
All right, now welcome back. Now we have been talking about NASCAR all night long. I want to kind of step back and kind of fill people in on some of the things Bill Blair does. Now, Bill, you're not one to toot your own horn, so I'm going to make you toot your own horn. You were involved in NASCAR yourself as an engine builder, were you not?
Well, I was. When I grew up, I helped my daddy wash parts and pick this up and go get this, and I was a fetch-it guy. And I was just really, really interested in engines. And he bought a new lawnmower years ago. I'm talking about probably late 50s. No, wait a minute, late 40s. And he went somewhere, and while he was gone, I tore that little gasoline, probably 2-horsepower gasoline lawnmower apart. I ported it and I polished it, ground the rod, make it lighter. It was aluminum rod. And I took the muffler off, put a straight pipe on it, which was a water pipe. And he had some racing fuel there. I poured that in it, and it was hard to crank. And I got that thing going. I wound her up, and I went down through the yard, and that thing blew all to pieces. It broke a rod. So I pushed it back up to the house where it was at. And about a day later, he was wanting to mow. He got a hold of that thing. There was oil everywhere. He couldn't be and ask me what happened. And I had to tell him. And he didn't get mad, but he had to get another motor for that lawnmower. But, I always liked to mess with him, and that was my first experience. And then I helped him, and then my daddy got Jim Pascal into racing, and Jim much younger. And, my daddy, he more or less aged out. When you got to be 40 years old, back in the 40s and 50s, they considered you to be too old. And the tracks were real rough back then, and you eat a lot of dirt during the race. And I know my daddy would spit dirt for 2 or 3 days, red dirt, and you had to come home and get it out of your eyes. And, it's just, there's a lot to go through, but those guys love to do it. And so I helped Pascal, and in '56, I was still in high school, and I was building those Y-block, I guess they were 312 cubic inch Mercury engines. We went to Milwaukee, Wisconsin. They'd rented Bill Strop had rented a warehouse to work on those Mercuries. He was in charge of Mercury at that time, and we had been out in Council Bluff, Iowa, and finished second. Prior to that, we'd been in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, and I think Jim won the race. And so our third race on that tour was going to Milwaukee. And I remember riding with Marvin Panch from Council Bluff to Milwaukee to keep him company. He got lost, and you talking about somebody that come through them cornfields over 100 mile an hour, and you couldn't see nothing but corn and down the highway. We finally got to Milwaukee and caught back up with Pascal, and we had to we run the same engine, so we pulled the heads and pans off of it, and I was putting rings on the pistons, and he was knocking the pistons down to me through the block, and I was hooking up the rod caps and torquing them. And Bill Strop walked up, and I could see his shoes there, and he asked Pascal, said, does that little kid know what he's doing? And Jim laughed, said, oh, yeah, he's okay. But it's something I always done. That's how I got started, really, and I just love to do that. And, you know, later on, I started, you know, I worked for Pascal and then worked for American Motors when he had that Javelin deal with the Grand American, and I think he won 10 straight races that year. Also built engines for Morgan Shepherd when he finished second to Jack Ingram in about 75, I guess it was, 76. And then first race that Terry Labonte won at Dawson, 7,500, 1980, I guess it was. I built that engine. And, of course, the guys at the shop that worked for me, they you know, helped too. Each one had something to do, assigned to do, and it all come together. So all of us were responsible for those engines, and we built a lot of sportsman modified engines and stuff over the country. And that's just some of the stuff. And drag racing, I traveled over the country, match racing different ones from Texas to New York to Ohio to Illinois, Florida, just a lot of places, you know. Match racing, the super stock AFX cars and ultra wheelbase cars. And at one time, I suppose I had the world's fastest 409 all-steel Chevrolet, and I think the had the first naturally aspirated Pontiac engine in a drag car to run in the nines, and that was in a '63 Pontiac Tempest AFX car. Just little stuff like that. Of course, we're still messing with them today, the flathead Fords, and we got a
You still race too, don't you?
Oh yeah, we raced with Ace Speedway a couple weeks ago, and I won that. And last year, I won, I think, 4 races. I think in the last few years, I've won about 50-some races now. But we got a club, about 10, 12 cars in it, and run at South Boston, Ace, and you know, tracks around here like that.
Well, I tell you what, Bill, you know, it's we're getting up towards the end of the show, and I just want to let you know something. I have learned more from you in the 3 years that I have known you. I have learned more from you about racing and NASCAR and all the good things that I've come to love about racing. I've learned more from you than I have from any 10 books.
Well, I live it, and my wife, she didn't know nothing about race cars, and she's got word that you can talk to her, and she's real knowledgeable now, just listening and participating. She's interested in it. When I met her, the first time I ever met her was at Daytona Beach in 1980, 81, somewhere along there, and the cars were running about 191, 92 mile an hour, and incidentally, my daddy was there, and he called Bill France like he always did, and France would always provide him a room at that Holiday Inn across the street and give him the tickets that he needed. So he told France that year that, you know, I was coming and had a girlfriend that wanted to be there, and so he went across when we got there to France's office, and France told the secretary what he wanted, and the secretary gave him a package that had everything in it. And so Sheila, that's my wife's name, she was living at that time in Fort Pierce, Florida, and I met her up there. I got there that morning, and she come in that night. And we went to the race. Like I say, the car's running 92 mile an hour. So the next week, they ran Richmond. And, of course, she was going to watch the race at her house down Fort Pierce, and she called me. The race hadn't been on long, and she had been, I think Ricky Rudd was leading it and might have won that weekend. But still, she called me and said, Bill, what's wrong with those race cars? Now, she was watching this on television now. I said, what do you mean, what's wrong with them? She said, well, last week they was running 190 mile an hour plus, and this week they're not running but 90 mile an hour. She didn't, I'm not making fun of her, but what I'm saying is that was her introduction to stock car racing. Now, today, when I go race, she takes tire temperatures. She can tell you if that car's tight or pushing. She knows how to add the numbers up and then subtract, and she can tell you what that car's doing. When she worked up at Harvick's, Kevin Harvick's up here in Kernersville, she could tell those people up there about the race cars. We watched that weekend, and she knew what happened at Harvick's car, and they said, how do you know all that? And she just, paid attention. And in drag racing, Doc, when had those drag cars going all over the country, they were famous old drag cars, and she wrote on the palm of her hand a little information about the cars. And people come up, and want to know what kind of heads it's got on. Is this a Max Wedge? Or is that a Super Duty intake, 1962 intake, and part number 956 and all? And she look at the palm of her hand and tell them what it was. And now she don't need to do that. She can tell you all about these race cars. And I bet you that she could drive a race car pretty dadgone good.
Well, I'm gonna open up an invitation here. Now, this weekend at North Georgia Speedway.
I'll sleep with her driving, and we've been up in Illinois and come home, and I'll get sleepy, and she'll start driving. It's a 40, 45-foot trailer sometime, and then, of course, we've got a 40-foot now in a dually, but she'll go down the road the speed limit, sometime 5 mile an hour speed limit, and go with the traffic and does a real good job. She's extra careful, but she's just a good all-around sidekick to have. I think she's a keeper.
I believe she is. Now, Bill, this weekend at North Georgia Speedway, we have a powder puff race. Now, you're more than welcome to bring her down here, and we'll put her in something, and we'll let her run at North Georgia this weekend.
I would do that, but she's got an appointment here a little bit later on to get a knee replacement. It really hurts her. So we're going to wait till she recuperates, and then we'll put her in behind the wheel.
There you go. I told her yesterday, well, I talked to her a little bit on Facebook. I told her, I said, she told me you was out mowing the yard, and we won't talk about your mowing incident you had yesterday, but she said that, I told her, I said, well, what we ought to do is get you on the show and have you tell us what it's like to be around Bill Blair all the time. And she started laughing, and she said, it's interesting. We'll just put it that way.
We're always messing with something and going somewhere, doing little stuff, and we're involved in a lot of different things. And it keeps us busy, but it's an interesting life, and I enjoy working with the people down at the Hillsborough Historical Group. And they're working so hard to have this program this year in October. It'll be a great, great program, and we really hope to see you there and many others. But I think it's the 10th year, and these guys are working so hard to perfect this. And the people they got that are coming, it's going to be one of the better shows ever.
Well, I tell you what, Bill, I have already got it wrapped up. The doctor will be in Occoneechee come October. And then the first of the month, I'm going to be in Occoneechee. And then the end of the month, I'm going to be over in Dawsonville for the Moonshine Festival. I've been talking to Gordon Perkle, and we've got some things working over there. I'm going to go over there, and they're going to try to stick a microphone in my hand when I get to Dawsonville over Saturday. So I'm going to have fun the month of October.
That'd be great. I talked to David Soulsby down there, and David's got an interesting suggestion, and that's you, Todd, myself, and Gordon, and him, and maybe Eddie. We need to have a round table and really put our information together so that somebody can put it in archives, and later on, you can go to it and find out how it was.
I agree. I'm wide open. You let me know the date. I will call in dead to work to go to that. See, I have to call in dead. They won't let me call in sick anymore. I told my boss tonight, well, I seen him at the store on my way home, and I bought a lottery ticket. I bought me a $2 lottery ticket. And he said, what are you going to do with that? And I said, well, you better hope that I don't hit it big, because if I do, I'm going to call in rich tomorrow.
Okay. Well, it's been an interesting night. I've enjoyed talking about the early racing. I wish I could be more helpful, but it's just little stuff that I remember, and I hope you people out there got a little something from it. I guess you get me talking around a group, I could probably talk for several hours. But, that's something that nobody can take away from you, and I really, to me, I enjoyed the early days better than I do today. I guess, I knew the guys, and I could relate to them more. And racing today, Doc, is about money. And I guess to a certain extent it was then, but now it really is. Those guys back in those days, they'd talk to you, they'd help you. And, we talked a little bit about Wendell Scott. Well, Wendell, when he started racing, I just recall him helping anybody that needed help after the race. If the car was towed up, he'd help them, get the car back together to help them get it home. And in my opinion, those guys accepted Wendell Scott. They liked him. I know he helped my daddy one time. Was up in New Jersey, Flat Rock, Michigan, I believe it was. And he'd broken a right front spindle, and Wendell helped him get it back together so he could tow it back home. But you had a lot more camaraderie back then, I thought. There's just one big family of racers. They all loved it. And they'd come, some of them spend the night with you or sleep in their car. That don't happen today. They got somebody to bring them a motor home, and they got a jet to get there. And if you ain't got a jet or a motor home, they ain't likely to speak to you. Now, there's some of them will. I admire Kyle Busch. I think he's changed from the way he used to be, and now I pull for him. Yeah. And of course, I always pull for Little E, but I still pull for Kevin Harvick. I like Kevin. Kevin was, and Delaney, his wife, was mighty good to my wife Sheila when she worked up there. And I got my favorites, and there's some of them that I don't pull against them, but I just don't really pull for them. But, you got to have your favorites. But I wish, like I said a while ago, I like these tracks that the driver drive them, and I like Darlington, and used to like to watch them race at Rockingham. You got to sure enough be a driver to run them tracks fast. But
that's
Darlington
right.
especially.
Well, Bill, I tell you what, man, they're waving the checkered flag at us. We're going to jump out of here, but I tell you what, you get Todd Morris on that, and you let me know a date, and we will sit down, we will do a round table. We will archive that, and we'll put it out there. We'll make that thing 6 hours long. It don't matter to me. As long as there's coffee involved, I'll be there till the cows go home. But, buddy, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show tonight. It has been a true blessing to have you as a friend and to have you on the show and to set the record straight. And, man, you got an open door to the show anytime. And to any of the drivers or the people that have been mentioned on the show tonight, any of you that want to come on, man, all you got to do is get a hold of me. Bill knows how to get a hold of me. We will set up a special show for each one of you as well if you want to come in and talk about the history of NASCAR as well. But, Bill, we're on the way out of here. Thank you so much for coming. We'll talk to you again, and I'll see you in October. How's that, buddy?
Well, thank you very kindly. I look forward to it and certainly enjoyed your show tonight.
All right. Mr. Bill Blair, ladies and gentlemen. Everyone, have a sweet weekend. A sweet week. Don't go nowhere. Go to the races somewhere this weekend. See you at North Georgia. It's the Monday Night Results Show. We're out of here. Have a great weekend. So long, everybody.
Y'all ready for this? The Monday Night Results Show is a copyrighted production of the Performance Motorsports Network. www.performancemotorsportsnetwork.com, a member of the Scorpion Radio Group, Inc., and may not be rebroadcast, replicated, or saved in any media without the explicit written permission of PMN. Check out our Facebook page or our section on the PMN website. The opinions expressed on this program are those of the host, co-host, and guests, and do not necessarily reflect those of the management and ownership of either PMN ESPN, or Scorpion Radio Group, Inc., the advertisers, or the marketing partners. If you would like to hear the results from your local track, or you are a track owner or a promoter and want us to cover your venue, give us a call during normal business hours, 717-749-0444. IM us on our Facebook page or email us at performancemotorsportsnetwork@gmail.com. Be listening again next week as we are talking results on the Monday Night Results Show with the Doctor. For the Monday Night Results Show, I'm Big Mike.